All right, it's National Championship Monday. I asked the question and answer. How can South Carolina get to a national championship in the next 1 to 3 years? Spoiler alert, I don't think they're that far off. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler, and I want to say shout out to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every day. We've got a great episode today. I'm very excited about it. But again, thank you to everyone who's making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, as well as on YouTube. That's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. And now is as good of a time as ever to join the fun over at FanDuel right away. From the first whistle to the final drive, you guys have heard me talk about this. FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5. And if they win that first $5 bet, you get $300 in bonus bets for free. If you just win your first $5 bet, that's at FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com today. All right, we got a good show today. I'm excited about it. So here's what we're going to talk about. It's Monday, January 20th. A lot going on in the world today. But most importantly, from my end, not most importantly, but the national championship is tonight in my old hometown, Atlanta, Georgia. They're going to crown national champion. I'm going to hate it either way because it's Notre Dame and Ohio State. The question I have and the topic that we're going to get into today is, what does South Carolina have to do to get to a national championship in the next 3 years? And I don't think they're that far off. And I'm going to get into some reasons why. But here's the thing. So we're going to tune in tonight. We're going to watch two Blue Bloods win or compete for and one win a national championship. Notre Dame, Ohio State. It's a TV network's dream to have those two fan bases in. I saw Brad Crawford tweet this out earlier and talking about some like the fans that are traveling. It is a very expensive ticket, but it's like a once in a lifetime type deal with some of these teams to have this kind of matchup playing for a national championship for the first time in a 12-team playoff. We expect Ohio State to get there. A lot of us expect Notre Dame to be in the mix for a 10-win season and be in the mix for a playoff, especially now. I've told you guys this before. There's no two teams that are going to benefit more from a 12-team playoff than Penn State and Notre Dame. Like they're going to get to 10 wins, and then people are going to look at that helmet and the tradition and all that kind of stuff, and they're going to say, yeah, they should be in. That's all they have to do is get 10 wins. How does South Carolina get into a situation where they are playing for a national championship? And I don't even mean consistently, right? I think a lot of Carolina fans would agree just getting to the national championship would be massive. Now, when you're there, you want to win, obviously, right? But how can South Carolina, in the next 1 to 3 years, because you're at a really good window with a really good opportunity here to get to a national championship, what do you have to do? Well, first and foremost, the thing that I keep looking at is you want to have as much familiarity in place for what's already working, right? Like you have to replace Dowell Loggins. We saw what that could look like in the bowl game. I don't think that's something I would base next season off of or anything like that. But when you look at South Carolina going into next year, there's a lot of people that think that the South Carolina team is going to be a top 10 or top 15 team. I would be shocked to see anyone have South Carolina outside the top 15. Shocked, like to start the year. Now, we have seen before with South Carolina where that could go wrong. That 2014 or 2015 season or 2014 season, I think it's 2014, where you start out ninth in the country and you open up with A&M. It's like the first ever game on SC Network and you get just destroyed. But they are going to start out with the top 15 program or a top 15 team next year. So what do you have to do in the next 1 to 3 years to get to a national championship? Because I think the things that are most important in football, you want to be healthy, you want to have good quarterback play, you want to play sound defense, and you also want to make sure you are not losing games you're not supposed to lose. South Carolina has a lot of those boxes checked. Lenore Sellers is going to be a problem for a lot of people next year. So I think you've already got that part under control. Clayton White's defense. Now, I am admittedly, and I hope you guys can call me down in the comments, I'm admittedly worried about what South Carolina's defense will look next year versus this year, because it was so good this year. At every single level, you were so good. The linebackers were so good, right? And you had some surprises there. Eamon Warry on the back end of that secondary there's a reason he's an All-American. And then, of course, you have Kyle Kennard at the edge. That was great. Maybe the kid from Mizzou ends up having a good year where, like, maybe you change places with Dylan Stewart, puts up the kind of production that Kyle Kennard had. And in place of that, you see the kid from Missouri, Jaden Brown, be able to have some sort of level of production that Dylan Stewart had in his freshman year. Right? I know he's not a freshman, but I'm saying, like, have Stewart's numbers replicate what Kennard did, because that's the kind of thing we expect out of him, to be that level of player. I think it was 247 Sports came out today and rated him as the number 2 overall freshman in the country from this past season. He's going to have a lot of eyes on him going into next year, and obviously the year after that too. But you need production at those specific places, because what you can't have is a dramatic fall off at any one position, right? Unless this defense all of a sudden just starts giving up 400 yards a game consistently, I don't think that you're going to see a big drop off, right? Let me pull up some of the numbers real quick on this. I need like in the positions that were your strengths this year, you need to have nothing that is a massive statistical drop off. And then in the areas that were your weaknesses, you clearly need to have some improvement. What I mean by that is this: the defense can't have a huge fall off. Lenore Sellers cannot regress and not, like, if he plays like he did this year for next year, that's good enough again to win 9 or 10 games. That may sound stupid, but think about what I'm saying. Like even if he doesn't progress at all, which he will, and the receiving core around him, they will also progress. But even if he doesn't, that's still good enough to win 9 or 10 games, and they have the same exact schedule they had this year as they have that they'll have next year, just mixed with home and road, right? So that's one thing. The area you need to improve the most on, protecting him and creating lanes and push up front in the run game. This is a South Carolina team that, as I've told you guys before, for as good as Lenore's was, and honestly some of his best games and best moments came when he was having to improvise. You gave up 41 sacks this year. 41 sacks. Now, to put that in perspective, Oklahoma was dead last in the country at 50, but second worst in the SEC and 123rd in the country was South Carolina with 41. In the last two seasons combined, they have allowed 82 total sacks. So what that leads me to believe is you have, like, it seemingly can't get worse, right? Like, you would have to be able to improve. I don't think you would stay down 120th or worse with the recruiting class that you're bringing in, with the portal class you're bringing in. But that offensive line getting better is the first thing I think you need from an improvement standpoint that will vault you from this 9-3 little purgatory you found yourself in this year going into next year, versus kind of being a catalyst to get you into 10 wins and a spot in the playoffs. Because here's the thing, and I'm not trying to put salt in the wound because we all know what happened. There's not a ton of games on that schedule you look at this year like, well, they probably shouldn't have won that game. Maybe Clemson because of the turnovers and stuff like that, right? Maybe Mizzou because Mizzou scored late. But, like, the games they won, it felt like they should have won. It's the games that got away that are so frustrating. The LSU game, which I'm apparently just not over. The Alabama game, like, if you win one of those two games, you are in the college football playoff. And everything else didn't feel like it was a super big stretch for them to have won. The opening game, against whoever it was they played, who was it? And it's been Old Dominion. Like beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Don't lose to anyone you're not supposed to lose to. You saw that with Alabama this year. It's one of the main reasons they were held out. Like, they beat Georgia. They beat the brakes off LSU. They lose to Vandy and Oklahoma. So win the games you're supposed to win. You cannot have any surprises and lose the games you're not supposed to lose. But the biggest improvement has to be up front. It has to be up front. I told you guys before, from guard to guard, that interior offensive line, you're losing 93.5% of your total snaps taken last year. You've got to figure out a way. And that sucks, by the way. That sucks. At the same time, it doesn't feel like it could necessarily be much worse going into year two. I think Beamer's done a great job at recruiting. I think Josiah Thompson's going to go into year two as a prominent left tackle in this conference, and he's only going to get better. We see it. That's usually when players make their biggest jump in terms of not only production but also like just excelling into like not only growing and developing physically, but also learning the game, being like experienced like in a, not just in college but also at SEC, like an elite Power Four competition. It's from year one to year two. So that's where I would start right there. You have got to get better up front. You've got to give Lenore Sellers more time to be able to drop back and not have to run for his life. Now, again, he was great when things were off script. He was great. But ideally, you would want to have the ability to have him be able to drop back, have time to make good decisions, have time for some of these passing concepts and these passing trees and routes open up that like Mike Shula, I'm sure, will get creative with. And then the biggest part of that, too, for the improvement of the offensive line is being able to run the football consistently, right? Like, because you were able to do that last year a lot of times, but man, a lot of that had to do also with having one of the best running backs in the country. You don't have Rocket Sanders coming back. I think you got a good running back room, but having some sort of meet me in the middle type situation between the backs and the offensive line where it doesn't feel like it's so solely based off of the talent of the running back if they're going to gain yards, that is a big deal. And so I think you've got to figure out a way to get better up front, especially in the interior. And I think they will. I just, it's hard to see a place like this. One, they haven't missed on a ton of their gets in the portal under Beamer, knock on wood. But they also have done a tremendous job of evaluating and developing talent. And I don't think that they're going to be bringing in more talent than arguably they have in the last 10 years and somehow regress. You know what I mean? All right. That is all for the first part of the show. We're going to get into some other things, too, of how they can get to a national championship after this. Before we do, I want to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks. So you guys have heard me talk about this before. There's some big opportunities to make some money tonight, and I hope you take advantage of it. Take advantage of it with our friends at Prize Picks. The place to get real money and real money sports action is Prize Picks. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Now, whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prize Picks has made it even easier than ever to win big while enjoying all football season. For me, I am all about the over-unders in terms of just tell me if they're going to get more or less of receiving yards, passing touchdowns, rushing yards, whatever. You don't have to pick winning or the winning team, winning against the spread, anything like that. Just tell me certain players you think are going to be higher or lower, more or less in their picks and their stats. So, for instance, this weekend, you saw Lamar Jackson. Was he over under 250 passing yards? Travis Kelce, who's always great in the playoffs. There's opportunities galore at Prize Picks. And now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in the action than with Prize Picks. So here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players, and if your picks hit, you could wind up winning 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few picks. If you're ready to run your game this football season, download the app, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Oh boy. That's right. $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks. All right, we're back, and we're going to get into more of the discussion that we have been talking about, which is national championship tonight. How can South Carolina get there? Like I said, improve up front. Here's the other thing, too. I don't think that you need – I don't think you necessarily need a go-to alpha, day one, top 15, high first round in like NFL draft pick at receiver. I do think you have to have somebody you can count on and be not only just a safety net for you, but also somebody that you know is going to step up when you need the most every single time. And this year it was Simon, and he was a tight end. He wasn't a receiver, but he was everywhere you needed him. And I know what happened in the last game of the year and the drop. It wasn't a great pass from Sellers, but like, is next year a year where you find out Nick Harbor finally takes the next step and is like in an absolute matchup nightmare for people, or is it also something where it's like we saw what Campbell, Dalvin Campbell could do at the end of last season, which is, listen, he might not be a guy that's going to go in and get 6, 7, 8 receptions per game for 115 yards, but he's going to take the top off the defense, which is going to open up so many other opportunities for everyone else. And he's going to constantly find himself in big situations and big moments, being the guy with the clutch gene that's going to put you in positions to win games. That was Campbell for the last that Missouri game. Like, it was unbelievable. He was fantastic to end the season. Simon was like that all year. I mean, listen, Harper got really, really good as well. This is arguably, I'm not going to say it's the most talented because there's so many good receivers that have come through this university, but you could make the case that from a depth standpoint, it's the deepest level of talent in the receiver room that you've ever had. Like, you think about all the names that they brought in, all the 5 or 6 recruits you brought in from this year's class alone that are receivers that were like 3 and 4 stars, a lot of like elite level 4 stars that were wanted from like all over the country for one, and then 2 in all American games and just like high end type players. They can come in and make immediate impact, or you're going to see some of the guys from last year that come in and like, didn't have as much time and playing time this year, or you're going to see stuff like the guys you have returning, is Jared Brown going to be able to have another good year? The kid from Parkview and Coastal Carolina who was kind of banged up, like, is Mazio Bennett going to take the next step? That's the one I think is probably you're going to see the biggest impact per game, I think, next year. Mazio Bennett, I think, going into next season, I think that's going to be a guy that you look up and every single week he's got 55 yards or more every week. I think he's going to be like on 3rd and 9, you're going to find him across the middle for an 11-yard gain. For whatever reason, I just think that kid is going to take the biggest step going into next year. And I could be wrong, but you need somebody that can be alongside Sellers so he's not having to do everything on his own. I think the bright side of that is you saw people do that this year for Sellers, and it was like, it just feels like we're just scratching the surface, if that makes sense, right? Because it's like even guys like Nick Harbor, former 5-star, who are like, he's still just learning how to play the position, right? Like hopefully you get him for 1 or 2 more years. I mean, you would say 2, but like the other side of that is hopefully he's so good this year, maybe he will go pro. I don't think that's something that's really come up a ton as of right now, but who is going to step up offensively to be that guy? Because the other part of it too is this. The run game, I don't think it's going to take a step back necessarily. I think you're deeper at running back than you were this past year. I think you will be deeper next year, but you're replacing one of the best backs in the country. And I like Rocket Sanders was so good in so many moments. I mean, the game against Mizzou, dragging defenders in on that shovel pass to win the game. Like, once he got about to like you were looking at him or watching that play and you're like, oh my God, get the first. And then he gets inside the 10, then he gets inside the 5, and you're like, oh my God, he's not going to go down. he's just, and that is, you just need somebody with that kind of clutch gene, or a guy that it's like, listen, it's 3rd and 3, we need 4 yards, 3rd and 2, we need 3 yards. Like, I can give this dude the ball, and we're going to feel good about our chance to get in the first down. I think Lenore Sellers has a chance to be one of the best and most special players in the country next year, and I think he will be. I would love to see all of this not fall solely on him, because there were like the Clemson game. Now listen, he made some mistakes, but you talk about like that's a game where Rocket has some turnover issues. It's a game where Lenore's had some turnover issues, but you get down the field and it's like, man, it's like 3rd and 16. It was 3rd and 16. It's still incredible to me. But like, it's awesome what he can do off script and on his own with his athletic ability. You want to see, like, ideally to get to a national championship, you don't want to have all of those blank moments that like, because you only get so many of them. Listen, my girlfriend who's live producing the show, she's an Auburn fan. I think her freshman year was the 2013 year. She can tell you there's only so many crazy luck moments you can have before that luck runs out. And ideally what you would want is to have him flourish as a passer because the passing game and the offense, she just corrected me and said she's a sophomore, was a sophomore. The passing game is so good that he has time to throw, and the offensive line is so good he has time to throw, and you've got people on their heels, and you're able to develop stuff like downfield passing and like at every single level in these route trees, like I already explained, and then also being able to establish the run, so it's not completely one-sided. Like you think about South Carolina in the past couple of years, and it's like, man, Spencer Rattler was great. You had Xavier Leggett, but it felt like the offense was completely one-dimensional, partially because it was. That's what you want to avoid doing next year. You want to be more balanced, and you want to figure out a way to have somebody that's going to say, listen, if it's 3rd and 9, we're getting 10 yards. We have to keep this drive alive, we're getting 10 yards. So that's part of it. Hold on, we got some late breaking news here from the NFL. As Ben Johnson was just hired from Detroit to the Bears. Anyway, so that's the other part of it offensively. I think that you're going to have a situation where you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Can you put enough stuff around him? And can because I think the players you have in place around him are going to be really good. Can you make sure and find a way that they can like, if you don't have the one guy, and South Carolina's had like the one guy in the passing game a lot, but if you don't have the one guy, you have enough playmakers that everyone's involved, and like, I honestly, I get excited talking about it because I think they can do it. I really do. I just don't see a situation where the offensive line can be worse than it was. I just don't. Like, the offensive line being somehow, in some way, giving up 41 sacks again. If they do give up 41 sacks, I think it's because you played 15 or 16 games. So there you go. Now, the last thing I think this team has to do going into next season, and I'm going to address it when we get back, but it has to do with Shane Beamer and him as a coach and what he needs to do to take the next steps to get this to being a championship level program. Before we go to break, I do want to tell you real quick. Probably not. Okay. I do want to tell you before we go to break about our friends at FanDuel. And if you're like me, right, and you're in a happy relationship, I always say this: I hate joint Facebook accounts. I hate joint. I don't really hate joint checking accounts, but I will tell you, I hate joint Facebook accounts. Make a joint betting account. It's one of the best things that I have done. Or I'm not sure if I'll talk about this. I think I'm going to get scolded from the producer here in a second. But there's so much action going on at the end of football season. There's so much going on tonight for the national championship. If you've been following with any of the stuff on social media with me, the Big Picks Energy stuff, we're like 14-2 in our last pick. So follow us along and make yourself some money. And make sure when you're doing it over with our friends at FanDuel. Because from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Yesterday, there were some pretty awesome games. How much more awesome would it have been to win some money on those? Well, join our friends at FanDuel, and you can make sure, if you're a new customer, your first $5 bet, as long as you win that, they will turn that into $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. It's easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps things exciting. You don't have to just bet on who's going to win. You can bet on player props. You can bet on game props. Who's going to score first? Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that when we come back with the Ohio State game. You can talk about all those things and bet on all those things as well. They have you covered, and they have the most up-to-the-minute and up-to-date technology and stats right at your fingertips. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so we'll be back right after this. All right, final thing I think that I would say as of today, we're probably going to revisit this throughout the season or off season, but what are the things that this team and program have to do to win or to get to a national championship in the next 1 to 3 years? The quarterback is in place. I don't know if Clayton White wants to be a head coach. I don't know that. I'm not saying he does or doesn't. I'm saying I genuinely and earnestly don't know that. Here's the thing I always go back to. not all coaches want or need to be a head coach. Like, think about how many good coordinators you have at all these different levels that have tried to jump up and be a head coach, and they're probably not ready to do it. Um, I don't know if he has a desire to be a head coach. I don't know that at all. I do know he has been arguably the best, like, pound for pound defensive coordinator in the SEC since he's joined, like, this staff 4 years ago. Led the SEC in turnovers for the 4 years he's been there. The way he's been able to dice up different offenses and make them look silly and things and teams that were, prolific offensively coming into some of these games. Like, look at Clemson. I mean, the Clemson game was a 17-14 win. Clemson had one of the better offenses in the ACC. People don't like hearing this, but Cade Klubnik had one of the best seasons of any quarterback in the country. 33 touchdowns, 4 interceptions going into the playoff. Like, he was awesome. You found a way to shut him down. So how do you keep the continuity for one, and how do you keep the defense good? I think that the consistency of that, because I don't think Shula's going anywhere. If you can keep those guys on board, that's only helpful. Now, we don't see a ton of that longevity at that position, especially as a not a subordinate, but like at a coordinator position instead of a head coaching position. It happens. We've seen it in some places. Look at Clemson is another good example. But like, if they can keep Clayton White in place and they can figure out how Mike Shula can be like as good of a play caller as we saw for the last 6 games out of Dowell Loggins, then I think you're fine. You have the quarterback in place. You have the quarterback of the future in place. You're also in contention for the top quarterback of the 2026 class, Jared Curtis. Like, that stuff's all great. You have top 10 facilities. You're able to start getting recruiting classes. That transfer portal class is now up to number 13 in the country. 13 in the country with just 12 guys you've taken. That's incredible. So I love that. The ability to recruit. I think you're going to start seeing top 20 classes more consistently, not these 22nd, 23rd, 24. I don't think you're going to see those types of classes. I think you're going to see classes that are top 20 because the culture and things that Shane Beamer's building are all things that people want to play for and be around. Now, here's the thing. Shane Beamer is the last piece of this puzzle. And I think Beamer's awesome. I love Shane Beamer. I would play for him in a heartbeat. I love what he has done, rejuvenating the excitement around this program. And here's the thing with Beamer too, is you can tell he loves it. Like, now he lets his emotions get the best of him sometimes, and he wears his emotions on his sleeve. And as somebody who grew up listening to a lot of emo music, I get you, Shane. I get you. Please don't ever play Taking Back Sunday in a post-game press conference. I'm begging you of that. But what I'll tell you is this. The coaches who get it and the coaches who have the most success, at times, it feels like are the ones it means the most to. Like, the 2 coaches that are in the national championship tonight, like, it means a lot to Ryan Day for him to represent Ohio. I'll give you an example that people don't talk enough about. Coach O at LSU. Now, you can say that was in a disaster, the way everything went and transpired after that. But that 2019 team, he's the one out that went and got Joe Burrow. Like, he's the one that went out and made sure he got his 2 offensive coordinators. He's the one that went and got Joe Brady as the passing game coordinator for that offense. Like, he made those hires. And if you ever talk to him, the biggest thrill of his life was representing the state of Louisiana. I think Shane Beamer falls in line with that kind of passion for this state. And he wants this for this fan base and for this state. Like, I think Dabo lost a little sight of that. I think he's starting to realize some of the errors in his own ways, even though he won't admit it. But I think that's what Beamer has now. What I need from Shane Beamer to get to the next step is the crap you saw against Illinois can't happen. Get fired up. Get your team fired up. Go to war for your team. Go to battle for your team. Like, all those things. But you cannot lose your composure enough as a head coach to where some of those things that should not be able to get under your skin get under your skin. And we've seen it time and time again. And we've just seen him get in his own way. And the example I brought last year about the Ole Miss game, when it's like, hey, you don't need to go for a 4th and 1 here. You're down 7. You know what you have on defense. You're on your own side of the 50. No reason to go for 4th and 1 here. And you do. And they stop you, and now the game's seemingly out of reach. The stuff in the Cheez-It Bowl, like, I am all for you getting fired up. Whatever Brett Bielema said afterwards, and what he actually meant, his intentions of the arms and all that kind of stuff, whatever he was doing, whatever. I don't care. Like fine. Let's just say he's being honest. It's a misunderstanding. I still don't care, and I'm not mad about the reaction from Beamer. What can't happen is if you're that upset about what they're doing in the late parts of that game or throughout the game with the substitution stuff, you can't have that reaction and then less than 5 minutes in real time later have them do this to you again, where you have to call a timeout because you don't have the right personnel on the field as you're trying to score inside the red zone. That can't happen. So we need to see some growth from Beamer. And again, part of his charm and part of his success is based off his passion. It's just one of those things where it's also sometimes the detriment that can get him. And it's just, he's still such a young coach, man. He's such a young coach. He's got so much ahead of him, and I love what he's been able to build at a place that has like really been hungry for it. So that's what I would have to say. I told you guys to give you some picks for the national championship tonight, and I will. So make sure you head over to Prize Picks or FanDuel to get to place any of your bets. But here's what I have for tonight, real quick. Ohio State to score first. Ohio State by 3.5 in the first half of the game. I like Jeremiah Love over 5.5 receiving yards. I like Trevion Henderson to have more than 11.5 yards for his longest reception. And I also like Notre Dame under 20.5 points. Those are my best bets. Big Picks Energy. Hope you guys enjoyed following along with that. Make sure you keep up with it on social media. Follow us on social media. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Really appreciate you guys. And for the person that I saw at Publix out here in Lexington off 378 earlier today when we were shopping, it was a blast meeting you. It's always fun seeing you guys out. I would say, like, I don't say in the wild because it was at Publix, but out from behind the screen and not just interacting on social media. It really meant a lot. Some of the kind words you said to me in the water aisle of Publix. So you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy watching the national championship. Be safe. We'll be back tomorrow. Go Cox.